What's up guys, today we're going to be having a look at what are my two favorite USA made watches. These are both dive watches and they have quite a few similarities, but there are enough things that we can compare and contrast to make a bit of a decision of which at least I think is the best watch and which is better value for money. Now, the first thing that you have to keep in mind is that both of these watches are obviously automatic dive watches. They are both powered by a Sellita SW200 movement. They both retail for right around the same price. It's $635 for the ITHYUS Abyssi on my right, and it's $629, these are US dollars, for the Farr and Swit Seaplane on my left. However, the Abyssi does come in a stainless steel strap, while the Farr and Swit comes in a bit of a, I'm not sure what exactly is it, the material that it's made of. It looks a bit like nylon. I'm not sure. It's a nice strap, but I just don't think it goes well with the actual watch. So maybe some of you will be thinking, okay, if you get stainless steel on the ITHYUS, then that's a better value right there. However, the stainless steel bracelet that comes on the ITHYUS is trash. I mean, it's not a terrible bracelet, but it's the kind of bracelet that you'd get on a watch worth a third of the price of the ITHYUS. It's nothing special. It's the kind of strap that you can get, the kind of bracelet that you could get for probably $10 on any website that sells watch bracelets. So I definitely don't think you're getting that extra added value because you have a stainless steel bracelet on the ITHYUS as compared to a nylon sort of strap on the Farr and Swit. Now, however, having spoken about some of the similarities, I think that one of the main things that separates these watches is the fact that there are a bit of contrast between the dial and the case on both of them. Okay, so first let's go through some key specifications. 41mm for the ITHYUS with 22mm lug width, 42mm on the Farr and Swit with 22mm lug width. However, having worn both of these for quite a few months now, I can say that the ITHYUS does play bigger than the Farr and Swit, and I think the main reason for that is the crown protruding out more than it does on the Farr and Swit, and also the bezel protruding more than it does on the Farr and Swit. So if you actually have a look at the bezel here, you can see that the kind of design that they've gone for the bezel and the crown is similar in terms of how pronounced it is. So the crown is really big, really thick with deep and rough edges. So it's a bit harsh to the touch. Doesn't feel as well finished as the Farr and Swit crown does, and the bezel also sticks out a bit further in comparison to the case, which just makes it feel like a bigger watch, whereas on the Farr and Swit you have this crown with it looks like maybe it could be a sandblasted, but I think it is just brushed finished on the crown and the rest of the case. I mean, there's pretty much no other finishing on any part of the case or the side of the bezel. It's just all this same kind of brushed finish. It does have a very utilitarian, very rudimentary tool watch aesthetic, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is, in my opinion, probably the biggest downfall of this watch, and I'm going to explain why in a couple of minutes. But so the crown is being shielded by these very, very tall crown guards, which personally I think look quite good with the watch. They don't throw it off balance at all. I think it looks good with what they're trying to go for. Keep in mind that this is taking a few elements from that Seaplane, from pilot's watches, and they're mixing it in with a dive watch. So you do have a bit of an interesting mix and mash there that I think personally they've managed to pull it off and make it work on this watch. Now, as I was saying, the bezel on the Farr and Swit sits in more neatly compared to the case. It doesn't stick out as much, and it does bevel down to a bit of a dip on the edges of that bezel, which once again make it feel like a bit of a smaller watch. Very comfortable to wear. They both are, but personally I think that in terms of comfort and ease of use, I think the Farr and Swit probably takes it. And I think another reason that is because the crown on the ITHYUS does tend to dig into your wrist a bit, and that is mainly because of what I said of the edges not being as well finished as they are on the Farr and Swit. Now, these watches, in terms of the cases, before we go into the dials, in terms of the cases, I feel almost like they want to swap cases. I feel almost like the case of the Farr and Swit would be more appropriate with the aesthetic of the dial in the ITHYUS. I'm going to explain why, but first let's have a look at the actual case. So, as I said, the Farr and Swit has pretty much the same finishing everywhere on the case, and it has been done to a high standard, so I'm not complaining about that, but there's just nothing to it in terms of extra levels, in terms of different finishing, maybe some polished sections. There's just really nothing to it. It's a very tool watch aesthetic. However, you move on to the ITHYUS and you have something quite different. So you have also brushed finishing on the sides, and then also brushed finishing on the sides of the bezel, but then you have these very, very nice curves at the top, and you have these polished segments at the top of the watch too, as you can see there. Very, very nice how it plays with the light. And then you have an extra level here where it goes back to a brushed finishing. So it's kind of a strip of polished that goes around. And then also on the other side, you have the same thing, but going all the way up to the top of these small crown guards, then going around. And it just looks very, very nice. It's a very, very nice case finish, and it's something that you wouldn't really expect looking only at the dial of this watch, which is why I say that I think these two watches want to swap cases. Now, another thing I don't really understand is the watch that has the more elaborate case and the watch that has nicer, more refined touches on the case also has drilled out lugs to be able to swap bracelets and straps with ease. Whereas the watch that you would expect to have drilled out lugs, which is the tool watch looking case, doesn't. And I just don't understand why. I mean, they would be much more fitting in the Farr and Swit watch than they are in the ITHYUS watch. However, as you can see, there are no drilled out lugs. Now, the story changes and contrasts drastically when you look at the dial of both of these watches, and I think it's obvious why. I mean, first of all, let's get out of the way with the bezel. The bezel on the ITHYUS is titanium. It's at the start I was a bit skeptic of the use of titanium only in the bezel of the watch, because obviously titanium is a softer metal than steel, or at least it can scratch and dent easier than steel can. So personally I thought that this was going to be one of those cases of the bezel just looking 5 years older than the watch after a few months. However, that's not been the case at all, and I have put this watch through its paces a few times. I've travelled a few times with it. I've been wearing it constantly for the past 4 months, and there's not a single scratch in that bezel anywhere. I think one of the things that really helps the fact that there are no scratches in this bezel is that they've gone for a matte finish on the actual bezel itself. They haven't tried to make it shiny, which I think is definitely a good thing, especially when you're using titanium. And the action on the bezel is very, very solid. It's 120 clicks, no playback, no backplay at all, just none. Absolutely solid. Once it's in that position, it's not going anywhere. However, there is a bit of backplay on the Farr and Swit. So as you can see there, it does wobble a bit. Nothing serious, nothing terrible. I mean, it still is a very nice bezel too, and it's probably easier to use than the ITHYUS. The ITHYUS has a more, it does need a bit more strength to turn it. However, that obviously adds to the security of it. Whereas personally, what this reminds me of is an Invicta. Now, I'm not saying that in a bad way, right? Because I always considered that the Invicta a Pro Diver that was my first watch, my first automatic watch, which I still own and cherish because it was what introduced me into the world of watch collecting. But yes, it's very similar. It even makes a very similar sound. It's a really tinny, high-pitched sound, and it does feel very, very... Actually, let me just bring my Invicta to compare. Just give me a second. Okay, so here is my Invicta Pro Diver, and yep, my memory wasn't failing me. That is very, very similar to the bezel on the Farr and Swit, and it is even a very similar sound. I'm not sure if you can pick this up on the microphone, but yeah. If anything, I think the bezel on the Invicta is actually more secure than the one on the Farr and Swit. But anyways, let's get that out of the way. Now, the bezel on the Farr and Swit isn't your ordinary ceramic bezel, as it may appear. It's actually a sapphire crystal bezel. Now, personally, I would have been perfectly fine had it been sapphire crystal or ceramic, because at the end of the day they do look very similar, and in terms of scratch resistance and shatter proof, they are very similar also. Although I'd probably say that sapphire crystal would be more prone to shattering than a ceramic would. You could correct me if I'm wrong on that on the comments, but that's personally what I think. But once again, been wearing this constantly for the past 4 or 5 months, not had any problems with it, no scratches whatsoever on the bezel, and it's a very, very nice looking bezel. I think probably one of the main advantages that you get with a sapphire crystal bezel is that you can kind of look at the actual, let's see if I can focus. Okay, you can kind of look at the paint for the numbers underneath the glass. So you do get more depth than on a ceramic bezel. It does look like it's just a layer of glass that's covering the numbers underneath, which I think is a nice touch, and it's not something that you see that often. Whereas ceramic bezels nowadays are a dime a dozen. Now, both of these watches do have display case backs, and they both have a pretty standard... No, actually, what am I talking about? The ITHYUS, I thought this one had a display case back. It doesn't. The ITHYUS actually has a design with air molecules, and it's a nice design. It's been deeply engraved. I'm going to pull up some shots here on the screen so you can have a look at that. And then the Farr and Swit has a display case back with a very standard looking rotor. No real decoration has been done to it. I never really understand the point of having a display case back on these kind of movements unless you're going to decorate it, or at least put a custom rotor like Oris does or like Hamilton does. However, to get back to the point of which I think is the better watch. Now, as I said, when you compare the dials on both of these watches, you have a much more interesting dial on the Farr and Swit. As you can see, you have that starry sky at the top, and then you have that wave dial reminiscent of the old Omegas at the bottom. Then you have that kind of circle on top of the 6 with some information: Seaplane, automatic, the water resistance, which is 100 meters on the Farr and Swit and 300 on the ITHYUS, and then that Seaplane design. And I think it's a very, very nice looking dial. It's definitely not your common dive watch for this price range. It does look more expensive than what it is, I think, if you were just to be looking at the dial. But once again, I think it doesn't really fit the case that it's been given. And the main problem that I have with the case of the Farr and Swit is that it's not easy to find a bracelet that matches. So I've tried probably over 10 bracelets since I've got this watch. Only 2 of them actually fit the case without any gaps. Obviously I can't stand to use a bracelet on a watch that has gaps between the case, but the 2 that fit there, they just don't match, they don't go well with the finishing that they've given the watch, because it's not just a normal brushing, it is a particularly type of brushing, and you'd have to find a bracelet, I think, that had exactly the same finishing, which isn't easy to do. So this is not just the kind of watch that you can throw a bracelet on and have it look good. I think it does look very nice in this Bond style NATO. By the way, both of these NATO straps, which are excellent NATO straps, are by Luff straps, Luff. They make some of my favorite NATO straps. Just excellent quality, very nice design, very nice looking straps. Now, in the case of the ITHYUS, I've gone for this blue. It looks like a blue silk. Very nice how it plays with the light, and it goes really well with the color of the dial. It's almost a perfect match to the blue of the dial. Now, the thing about the dial on the ITHYUS is that it's very simple. I mean, it's very, very basic. There's not really much to look at. It's just your run-of-the-mill dial with nothing applied. There's no applied indices, there's no applied logo, there's nothing. And the logo that ITHYUS has is just a name in a very boring looking font, which once again is, in my opinion, a negative point. I would have liked them to put a bit more effort into the logo. I would have liked to see some applied indices. I just think that they could have made a bit more of an effort in terms of the look on the dial. However, the case is very nice. The watch is well built, well made. And I think that either one of these watches, for the price of around $620, $630, is personally a good buy. I would be happy with either one. However, if I had to make a choice over which one I would grab if I was going, say, on a trip, which one I'm more likely to wear, I would have to say it's going to be the Farr and Swit, because even with that case I don't particularly like, and even with this, the limited strap options, I do think that it's a better looking watch, much more interesting than the ITHYUS with that different colors in the bezel. Also, to point out, I haven't mentioned this, they both have sapphire crystal, obviously, with anti-reflective coating, and in that regard they're pretty much identical to one another. A good amount of anti-reflective coating, no complaints there. I'm going to leave up a lume shot of both of them. I do think that the lume on the ITHYUS is definitely much better than the lume on the Farr and Swit. The lume on the Farr and Swit is a bit disappointing, although it does have lume even in the bezels, which does look nice for the first minute or so after you fully charged it, but it fades out really fast, whereas with the ITHYUS it lasts for a long time and it's very, very bright. So yeah, I mean, in that regard, as I said, they're both really good watches. I'm not knocking the ITHYUS. I'm not saying the ITHYUS is a bad watch. However, personally, for my taste, the Farr and Swit goes better with it. Now, over the next few days, I'm going to be reviewing this watch by Vintro. This is the Vintro Le Mans 1952. This is a automatic chronograph with a seagull movement. Normally I don't like chronograph watches and I don't like gold watches. However, I really liked this watch. It's made in Germany, just came out a few months ago, and there's very few reviews on YouTube for it, so I'm going to be showcasing this in a few days, so be paying attention for the channel. I've also got another review coming for this watch that I'm very excited to be able to review. The Crew Automatic CA06. Excellent watch, and that's going to be coming out this week also. Anyways, guys, I hope you liked the review. Let me know which one of these you prefer and why. Until the next time, peace.